I mean, I don't want to say the confidence level, but things certainly changed. Like, I don't think 2 years ago Caps fans would have been like, oh yeah, no, Vanacek. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, Caps fans, let me know. But I don't recall the topic of conversation being like, oh yeah, Vanacek's going to give Shesterkin a run for his, or Samsonov, excuse me, a run for his money in terms of being our future starter. It seemed like the thought was Vanacek would be more of a stopgap until Samsonov took over full time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think both of them ended up kind of putting a question mark next to the heir apparent title that, they were both kind of competing before. There's no obvious answer. This could actually go very horribly for the Caps, where they end up with 2 RFAs and neither of them is a true starter.
Braden Holtby, come on back. His deal with Dallas will be up, I think. I think it's a 1-year deal. Winnipeg getting some business done as well. Neil Pionk, 4-year deal, just under $6 million per at $5,875. So Neil Pionk getting paid. This does put the Jets into, I'll use the word overage. Again, it's what, $81.5 million salary cap. They are at 83.6. Technically with 8 defensemen on the roster. It's interesting, Deej, because it seems like somebody has to go when you look at this defense. Because you have Josh Morrissey making $6.25, Nate Schmidt making just under $6, Neil Pionk making just under $6, Brendan Dillon at just under $4, and Dylan DeMello at $3. I mean, granted, you don't have one of those big Seth Jones, Erik Karlsson contracts, but that is a decent amount of money to be spending on these 5 players here. And just to quickly add this up, that is 30.7% of their cap between 5 defensemen. I don't know if that's a winning formula. It could be, though. It's a great defense on paper.
Yeah, I think Brendan Dillon ends up getting moved here. I've got to imagine there's a market for him as a very sound second pairing guy. Huh?
They just got him for the 2 second-round picks.
Yeah, and that's why it's weird, though, right? Because you look at DeMello, who has the no-trade clause, you got to imagine they'd only want to move one player instead of a couple to get, what are they over? $2.5 million, give or take?
Yeah.
It's such a... I think that, to me, is why the Pionk signing is so weird, is it just... The dust has settled. You know what I mean? Like, all the moves that were going to happen to create cap space seem to have already happened. And now the Jets are in a bind.
So I think DeMello has a 6-team no-trade clause. I don't understand it because Dylan DeMello is a really good defenseman. And, I have heard from a lot of Jets fans the idea of like, boy, this team kind of sucked when he wasn't on the ice. There's definitely a market for him. And out of the tradable contracts, he's the most tradable. I do wonder now if they, do you get Brendan Dillon to lose? Like, here's my thing. If you had an inkling, like maybe just plans changed. Like if the expansion draft was coming up now, there's no doubt in my mind that the Jets would have worked out a deal with Seattle to keep Mason Appleton and get them to take Dylan DeMello. Because again, like, I don't know, maybe they just didn't expect like, oh yeah, we're going to work out a deal for Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. I mean, that defense has completely changed. Like I said, I mean, some change has to happen. You move on from Dylan DeMello. I don't know if they want Eric Comrie to be their backup. That would scare me a little bit because he's bounced around so much now at 26 years old. And in terms of NHL games, he has 9. I don't know if you want him to be your backup. It's the feeling of Winnipeg can't possibly be done yet. And it just makes me wonder how much they're just kind of dealing with changes on the fly as they come to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will say, too, like, I don't necessarily hate that Neil Pionk contract. I mean, I think people look back at, the swap in the Jacob Trouba trade. I wouldn't say either team has necessarily lost that deal because it ended up being Ville Heinola and Neil Pionk for Jacob Trouba. And Pionk's been solid for the Jets. Heinola as a first-round pick is promising for the Jets. And Trouba finally looks like he's getting his footing in New York. So that ended up being a really good trade for both teams.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so to me, it's kind of interesting, right? When you look at his 5.8 and just, I don't know, you look and you see it's interesting because there is this extreme drop off. I guess not even extreme, but there's this drop off in name value that happens when you look at defensemen that are making 6 versus defensemen that are making between 5 and 5.8. And I don't know. I mean, is he worth 800,000 more than like Zach Werenski, you know, or like he's making 800,000 more than Morgan Riley? And I know it's a different market, but it's still the same amount of cap space as when those guys signed in terms of percentage. You know what I mean? Because of the dead cap.
I think in a way, when Werenski and Riley signed those deals that are about to expire, they were getting paid for future potential at that point.
Yeah.
And they have grown, if not exceeded, that potential. Whereas for Pionk, the standard in terms of what a defenseman like him gets paid now has gone up significantly in the past month or so. That's just how fair. I read it, at least. But I don't disagree with, in thought, do you want to pay Neil Pionk that much money? Probably not. But in theory, do you want to have to pay a number one defenseman $9 million? Even a low end, even like, Seth Jones can maybe be a top defender. Like, you don't necessarily want to pay him that, but you kind of have to now. So,
yeah,
it's a weird spot. Detroit re-signed Jakub Vrana, 3-year deal, 5.25 on the books. Another deal where, yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, you don't pick up Jakub Vrana in exchange for Anthony Mantha and then not sign him to a decent amount of money. And in terms of how good of a player Vrana is, I mean, yeah, in terms of like, I dare say, like, I mean, we'll see what he can do now that he has more of a demand on ice time, but there's a potential he could be a legitimate top 6 sniper and bag 30 goals a season. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility here. And it gives Detroit options. You know, the only guy that, I mean, they aren't even committed to a forward beyond the next 3 seasons. It's just Vrana and Michael Rasmussen. They have a lot of options. They are not tied down to anybody beyond the next 3 seasons. It's a pretty good setup, and they still have $20.5 million with like basically nobody to sign but Philip Roenick and Adam Ernie. So, like, they're set up incredibly well, and you can see what Yzerman's doing here. It's about maximizing the options that he has moving forward, and not, forcing himself to commit to somebody even if it's not working out, which was the Ken Holland special in Detroit.
It's also, this contract's very interesting to me when I compare it to the Sam Bennett contract, because Sam Bennett, like, I mean, it's a little bit different because Jakub Vrana was good in Washington as opposed to Sam Bennett, who is just struggling with Calgary. But, Jakub Vrana shows up to Detroit, gets 11 points in 11 games. He fits in there. And everyone's talking about what a great move it was in the rare win-win trade, in the trade that sent him over to Detroit. So, I don't know. It seems like a good deal. And I think one of the reasons that it seems like a good deal where it's not undergoing as much scrutiny as, say, the Sam Bennett contract is because Detroit has a shitload of cap room. So you can give a guy like Vrana 3x5, or 3x5.25, I believe it is. Because it's going to take a year or two before you're in a spot where you have to make those cap decisions that involve number crunching and minutia,
Yeah. Ross Colton has re-signed with Tampa. You might be saying, Tougie, why are you bringing this up? It's a 2-year deal, $1.125 million on the books. Number one, it's a pretty good number for Ross Colton.
Yeah.
Deej, that brings Tampa's current cap hit to $88.3 million.
Yeah, they're only 7 over.
7 million over, and that is with cap friendly, factoring in the Seabrook LTIR. 2 goalies, 7 defenders, 13 forwards on roster, which is what you would normally see. How the hell are they planning to shave $7 million off of the cap? Because
Victor Hedman, jet ski, you do the math.
There are 3 players, 3 skaters at least. Obviously if Vassie's out there, fuck. Victor Hedman makes 7.8, 8.5 Stamkos, 9.5 Kucherov. Otherwise, you'd have to move more than one player. Either Victor Hedman is going to have an unfortunate jet ski accident that's going to take him out for the majority of the season. Steven Stamkos, same thing. Or Steven Stamkos gets traded. Like, what are they going to do? They are $7 million over the cap right now.
I mean, trading Stamkos seems to make the most sense. That would be the most beneficial to Tampa, but what do you even give up for something like that? You know,